Welcome back to Ventripoint's channel, everybody. We're, of course, sitting here once again with Dr. George Adams. We're going to talk about some of the recent studies you guys have been up to today. George, are you ready to hop into it?
Absolutely. This is a fun part for me.
Yeah. Perfect. So you've told us there are 15 research products ongoing or in planning to show the meritorious use of the VMS 3.0 patients and patients at risk for various forms of heart failure. How do these studies help commercialize your guys' products?
Well, changing heart diagnostics for everyone worldwide, and especially for children, takes some time, and it takes a lot of validation work and a lot of education. And so these studies are, they're being done by the best of the best cardiologists who spent decades becoming the world's authority on a particular kind of heart disease, a particular heart problem. And so having the best of the best take your machine and say, I think this is really going to help this kind of patient with this kind of heart problem. Let me prove it. You say, fine, go for it. Right. So that's, and so once they do show that being able to analyze both the left and the right side of the heart with the VMS helps manage the patient and diagnose the patient, then that becomes a standard of care. And once that becomes the standard of care, they go out and say, hey, this is the best way you can deal with these patients going forward. Everybody needs us to switch over to this process. And so then everybody has to buy a VMS so they can treat the patients properly. And it's, in the United States and places like that, where, if you're not practicing the standard of care, you're going to get sued for malpractice. As soon as the standard of care changes, everybody switches over because you cannot afford the insurance premiums if you don't. So that's a driver, the big driver in the industry is to get the standard of care.
That makes sense. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So then you guys had also recently announced the start of a clinical research project looking at hearts in pregnant women at the Mazankowski Alberta Heart Institute. Tell us why this one is so important.
Well, it's particularly interesting one in pregnancy. It's one I've been wanting to do for over a decade, as my wife reminded me this morning. And it's because we don't really know very much about what happens to women's hearts when they get pregnant and they go through that pregnancy. But we do know is that there's about a 16 to 23% of the time they end up with major complications. And those people who come down with those complications are known to have high blood pressure, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, all the risk factors we know for cardiovascular disease. Yeah. So it's not surprising that, of course, and with the increased load on your heart, 50 to 60% more load on your heart in the third trimester of a pregnancy, that these people have heart failure problems and they can even die. Quite a few, actually. And in fact, the latest data from CDC in the United States is from 2014, the 50,000 women had severe complications from pregnancy in the United States. So this is a big number of people. Yeah. 50,000 people a year die from congestive heart failure. And so and people are all excited about congestive heart failure. So this whole thing about pregnancy is, we know what happens, but we don't really know what's going on with the heart. But we know that it's a big problem.
Definitely. I was going to say, and it seems to be a problem that is getting worse too. A lot of those factors there's increasing percentages in this country as well.
Yes. In the last decade, it's obesity, the number of the population of women who are pregnant with underlying obesity is doubled in the last 5 years. So yes, it's a big problem. And there are over 4,000 hospitals in the United States where to have obstetrics groups and deliver babies, and 40,000 obstetricians. So, and in the United States, they have standard programs, and you get to see an obstetrician 10 times during your pregnancy. So there's ample opportunities to go in there and look at the person's heart and figure out which people are struggling, and especially in the last trimester, the last 3 months. But again, you're not going to put a pregnant woman in an MRI machine over and over again for 2 hours at a time. So the ability of the VMS to accurately, reliably, and easily characterize both the right and left side of the heart in a matter of a few minutes is critical to be able to evaluate these women on a regular basis. And the ones that are getting in trouble, they can be treated. In fact, there's a recent study that just came out that showed that 70% of women who have severe complications in pregnancy are likely preventable.
Wow.
So, it's to me, it's just a classic opportunity for a sea change in standard of care to allow everybody to just be evaluated once or twice in the last trimester, make sure your heart is okay, good to go. It's only a 5-minute procedure. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, yeah, definitely sounds like a demographic where you guys can make the difference, and it's a very large market at that as well. So, when can we expect to see some results about this?
Well, we've installed a second VMS machine in the Masankowski Heart Institute in Alberta, in Edmonton, and so they've already started the studies. So these things take some time, but I would expect to have or first data pretty soon this year, this summer probably. And it'll take a while to publish the paper and get it into a top tier medical journal, but it'll be a landmark paper because I said there's very little known about what goes on here. But before that, there'll be conferences and they'll go and present the data. And so the people will begin to see, cardiologists will begin to see, okay, this is coming. This is the way I need to figure out how to get one of these VMS machines. And we'll be at those conferences exhibiting, taking people, getting people's names and things in hospitals who want to get started on the program. So that's how it works. But first thing is, let's get the data. And, again, Masankowski is a huge operation. They have lots of high-risk pregnancies, and they actually got a huge government grant, millions of dollars to do the study. We're just providing the equipment to them, and so they can go quickly. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, George, I feel like you did a great job of walking us through this study. I look forward to hearing about more exciting studies down the line and the size of the markets. Seems like there's a lot of other potential implications where you could actually get this in there as a new standard of care. So I look forward to seeing those as well. Is there anything else you want to add today before we go?
Well, I just want to reemphasize the fact that, changing the way things happen for the better. There's a lot of unmet need out there, and every cardiologist I talk to says I have somewhere where this could help. And those are all large markets. I mean, even a small number of the 4,000 hospitals in the United States is a big market. It's a lot of revenue for us. So people need to be a little patient, but when this hits, it's going to be very large. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, George, thank you again for joining. Everybody stay tuned for more updates coming soon. Send over your questions if you got them, and we will answer them. And George, you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Michael. Bye-bye.